Howdy! Welcome to Aspire Mountain Academy. I'm Professor Curtis, your instructor for this course in Introductory Statistics. In less than 10 minutes, this video shows how to use Excel and StatCrunch together to apply the Levin-Brown-Forsythe test for hypothesis testing of two population standard deviations or variances. Let's get started. So we talked in the last lecture about the Count 5 method as an alternative approach that we have to the formal method of hypothesis testing for two population standard deviations or variances, which relies on the F test based on the F distribution. But the Count 5 method is not our only alternative if we have a departure from normality in our data. So another popular approach is the Levin-Brown-Forsythe test, named after three different statisticians who made contributions to the test. It's more commonly known as the Brown-Forsythe test because the Levin test is a kind of a separate but related test that is also commonly used. And so sometimes, that Levin doesn't get the credit for the combination with the other two guys here, but that's just, that's the way statisticians are. Anyway, the first step to this method is you got to transform your data. So before we were actually looking at the absolute value of the difference with the mean value, here we're going to take the absolute value of the difference with the median value. And just like we saw with the Count 5 method, I think this is a step that's best performed in a spreadsheet application like Excel. You can use StatCrunch, but StatCrunch is kind of clunky for this stuff. And it's just really simpler from my perspective if you just dump the data in Excel and use it there. Then once you've got the data in Excel, you make your transformation with the data, and then you can just use the transformed data to make an independent t-test. And of course, that statistical test, I just dump the data from there back into StatCrunch, and just because StatCrunch makes it super easy to do that. And then I just conclude the hypothesis test as I normally would. Now, the transformed data values are essentially just deviations from a set value. In this case, it's the median. So the t-test for equality of means becomes transformed into a test comparing variation in two samples. That's why we can actually use the test that we normally use for two independent mean values when we're actually testing two standard deviations or variances. Now, this test is sometimes called the modified Levin test because there's, as I said earlier, there's another test named the Levin test, which uses the sample mean, and it's essentially the same thing that we were looking at with the Count 5 method. And so sometimes this is called the modified Levin test. I don't even know how to say this guy's name. Levin, whatever. It's like a statistician, man. It's like, they're off in their own world. He'll probably never see. He's not like turning over in his grave or anything. I guess he's dead. I don't know if he's dead. Maybe he's still alive. I don't know. Anywho, however you say the dude's name, that's the name of the test. And it's using the sample mean instead of the median. But it's the same basic procedure. So what we're going to do now is look at a video that I made, and I embedded it here. It's going to run you through the different steps of this, LBF test. It will call it that, the LBF test. So here we go. Okay, I've got my data loaded here in Excel, and I actually prefer using Excel for this part of the process because it's easier to do my data transformations in Excel. You can do this in StatCrunch if you want, but the way StatCrunch is organized, it's not quite as easy as it is to do it here in Excel. So the first thing I want to do is come down here, the bottom of my first column here, and I want to get the median value for the values that are in that column. So I'm just going to type in my median function from the parentheses, select the values for that column, and there's my median value. I want to do the same thing with this next column, so I'm just going to copy that formula over. And now we're going to make our transformed values. So Typically what I like to do is label the column with the transformation that I'm making. So in this case, we're going to take the x values, subtract the median, and then take the absolute value. And we're going to do the same thing with these column, only we're going to do it with the y values. We'll just do a little formatting here. Not that we need to, but it just makes it look a little nicer. So to get my transformed values for my x column, I want the absolute value of each individual data value minus this median value down here at the bottom. But because I'm going to subtract that same median value for each of the values in my x column, I want that number to stay the same, that cell reference to stay the same. And so I'm going to hit F4 on my keyboard. Whoops. Not what I wanted. I'll just have to put them in manually. For some reason it's not working. And there's the value I want. Go ahead and just copy that down. And now see, this value here is going to change as I go down, but this second value is the same number, it's the same cell reference, and that's what I wanted. I'm going to perform the same operation here for my my y values. Copy that down. And now I've got the data that I need to put in StatCrunch. So I'm going to go ahead and copy those cells. And then I'm going to get myself into StatCrunch. So here in StatCrunch, I'm going to go up here. Because I copied the column headings, I want to go ahead and just start copying here in the column headings. Control V copies my data. And now I'm ready to just conduct an independent t-test like I would with any other two-sample t-test where we don't have paired data. So stat, t-stats, two-sample with data, because we have actual data here. And I'm just going to identify the columns and make sure that this inequality sign here under the hypothesis test section is matching what you've got for your alternative hypothesis. Here in this example demo, we didn't actually evaluate a claim, but if we did, then we would get our hypothesis, alternative hypothesis accordingly, just like we've always done. Make sure that matches. And then come down here and press compute. Here's my results window, and I can get my p-value that I can compare with the significance level or the test statistic is a t-score. I'm going to compare it with the critical value. Either way, just conduct the test the way that you normally would. And that's all there is to it. Hope that helped you.
That brings us to the end of this mini lecture. I hope you found it helpful. You can find more mini lectures for this and other courses at AspireMountainAcademy.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.